You're listening to The Picture Show, a Mach 5 Network podcast. And here are your hosts, Jason Zimmerman and Jacob Lee.
Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to the Picture Show Movie Review Podcast. This is the show where each week we review one new movie that opened in theaters last weekend, we discuss the coming attractions for the next week, and we review one streaming movie from Netflix. My name is Jacob Lee, and I am all by my lonesome this week. There is no Jason this week. He did stop by in Baton Rouge, but he didn't get a chance because he's been driving across the country with his wife. He didn't get a chance to watch the movies for this week, so it's going to be kind of a short show because it's just going to be my opinions on both The Machine and Tucker and Dale vs. Evil, and then my opinions on the upcoming movies for this week. So before we get started, if you haven't done so, be sure to subscribe to our show in iTunes or on Stitcher Radio. You can find links to do that on our website at mach5network.com or by searching for the show on iTunes and Stitcher Radio. And our iTunes listeners can always leave us a nice review, and if you like the show, a 5-star review is welcomed, appreciated, and rewarded with hugs and high fives for all time. And as always, if you have something to say, you can find us across all social media at Mach5Network or email at mach5network@gmail.com. If you'd like to connect with me directly, you can follow me on Twitter at BadModem or on the Mach5 Twitter handle. I'm on there a lot now. I also want to make special mention and thanks to Andrew K. and Kaiju Jim for joining me on the Flipboard, the Mach 5 Network Flipboard page. If you haven't joined Flipboard yet, it's a really cool magazine for your iOS and Android devices. You can go on there and it creates a digital magazine where we're actually sharing stuff across the Mach 5 Network for us to read and comment and like. It's just a really cool way for us to kind of collaborate and co-create this whole Mach 5 Network thing. And Jim and Andrew have been doing a really good job commenting and posting new articles there, which hopefully, since we're not going to have a Mach 5 Network podcast this week, hopefully next week we're going to start picking articles that they share with us. And so that's going to be really cool moving forward. All right, well, let's just jump right into our first movie, our In Theaters Now feature, The Machine. Two computer programmers fall in love as they create the first ever piece of self-aware artificial intelligence designed to help humanity, but things go terribly wrong when the British government steals their breakthrough and teaches it to become a robotic weapon. Starring Toby Stephens and Katie Lotz, this is The Machine.
There are a lot of secrets down here in the dark.
You make weapons for the government?
No, I make intelligent machines. Machine, open your eyes. It's incredible. It's conscious. Conscious machines are dangerous. This machine has the potential to be so much more than just a soldier. They're afraid of you. They think you're too human.
All right, so The Machine. Last week we reviewed Transcendence, which was another movie about basically creating a self-aware artificial intelligence that I kind of enjoyed, but not really, and Jason absolutely hated. And so it was kind of funny that we picked this movie because we weren't going to go see one of the movies in theaters this week or weren't able to. And so here we are watching The Machine at home on demand. And I gotta say, I don't know if I like this one better than Transcendence. It is a low-budget film, but it's different. It's a very different movie. First off, on the low-budget indie film thing, you'll notice that every scene in this film... Every scene in this film takes place in a really secluded location, in these really dark sets. And so it doesn't have that sprawling, expansive nature that Transcendence had, but it still does what it set out to do pretty well. I will say that. The designs on some of the AI robot, AI-enhanced humans in this movie were really cool. They had these bright eyes that would shine in the darkness, and they did a lot of cool effects. It really reminded me of the original Terminator, where you would have this red background or black background, and all you would see were these glowing eyes peering at you from them. And it was a really cool and really creepy kind of just experience to see that. And I thought stylistically and visually it just worked beautifully. Toby Stephens was okay in this movie. I don't think I've actually seen him in anything else other than Die Another Day, which I thought he was fine as Gustav Graves in that film, but he wasn't, like a super memorable Bond villain. Katie Lotz, I thought, was the star of this film. I really do. And that's not just because I love her work on Arrow. I think she's a beautiful actress, and she's just very, very talented. And she really had the opportunity to play a range of characters in this movie. And it was so cool to see her, be almost two different people. It was really, really a unique experience. And the AI character that she plays in this film, she was very childlike and inquisitive, and it was a mind-blowing performance for me. It was what made this otherwise kind of uneven, shaky type movie. That's the one of the major bright spots, aside from some of the cinematography stuff that I just mentioned, were the major bright spots in this film. One thing that was kind of strange for me, I don't know if it's a good thing or bad thing, was the soundtrack to this movie was very, very influenced by the 80s genre of pictures. So it had that bong, bong, bong. I can't do it very well, but it sounded like it was very much like the Terminator, and very much like one of those sci-fi movies you would see on HBO or Showtime that you'd never heard of, or back in the early 90s or late 80s. And it just had that kind of tone, and I think that's what the director and the people who were scoring the movie, that's what they were going for. And it kind of fit, because it definitely fit that kind of space age electro type music. But for me, it made the movie feel cheap, simply because I began to associate it with those things. I don't know if you could have done it better, and I don't know what that would be, but it just didn't work for me, because it made me think, okay, this movie was produced cheap. It seems like it was produced 20 years ago, and I'm not fully digging that. So I don't want to say it's bad. It was probably trying to be an homage to some of those films, but it definitely left me with a strange taste in my mouth. One of the other major bad things I had about this, aside from Toby Stephens and Katie Lotz, none of the other characters really had much to do in this film. They were just kind of there, and they were vehicles for pushing the story along, so they weren't given much to act with. And so I found none of the other characters in this film especially memorable. And so it really all hinged upon Katie Lotz's performance. And so while it was very strong, no one else was giving the same amount that she was giving to this role. And that was kind of disappointing for me, because I think the movie really could have been great. The characters in the film, not only were they not given a whole lot to do, and the whole movie was kind of confusing at points, the whole movie is under, I think, 90 minutes running time. And it feels very rushed. It's a very self-contained, very, I don't want to say straightforward, but it's a very self-contained story. It's a character study about these two people, more or less. And everything else that happens around them is just there to show us what they stand for and what they're made of. And it works in that respect, but it feels rushed, which is strange, because for movies like Transcendence, it felt like it kind of dragged at points, but I thought it moved on at a decent clip. This one just felt like it was moving impossibly fast, even though we're studying this in this very short time period, not this 2-year expanse or 3-year expanse like in Transcendence. But I feel like if there was maybe about 20 minutes of really solid dialogue missing from this movie that could have fleshed out the world and the rest of the characters more, and made us think a little bit more about the ramifications of all of this, and to understand why these people are evil instead of them just being evil. And I think that would have helped the movie a lot. It could have been really good, and I wonder if for whatever reason, the studio said we need to chop this movie down a little bit because it genuinely felt like there was parts of the movie missing. But yeah, I mean, it's for a kind of limited release indie film direct to home, it was still pretty enjoyable. I put it on. I didn't get distracted while I was doing it. I watched it the whole time. But like I said last week, I get engrossed into these AI type movies. I just like the material and the concepts really well. But I can't say, like, after I was done watching it, I can't say that I really loved this movie. And I really wanted to, but I can't really say that. Transcendence was very good and proficient for me in, like, the cinematography angles. Where it lacked was story. And here, it had a strong performance, just like Transcendence did with Paul Bettany, I felt like, and Rebecca Hall. But Katie Lotz and Toby Stephens weren't given a lot to work with. And so from that respect, it has the same type of problems with bad storytelling, but it still captured me and engrossed me for the full 90-minute runtime. So with that being said, I still enjoyed it. I wanted it to be better. I think it really could have been better, just like I thought Transcendence could have been a lot better with a little bit stronger writing. But they did some really neat things, like with the eyes, the glowing eyes thing was, I'll never forget that. It was a really, really cool visual, and they used it a few times in the film, and it's awesome. And Katie Lotz's performance was awesome and dramatic and great. And you know, I gotta say, I'm gonna give it the same score that I gave Transcendence. I think The Machine is another 3-star film. It's a good, solid movie, but it could have been better. It was just left wanting.
You have been weighed.
You have been measured.
And you absolutely
Have been found wanting.
All right, so moving on from my review of The Machine, coming up next week's May 2nd release review is going to be The Amazing Spiderman 2. And as I am recording this myself, I have already seen it, and I am going to hold my comments until later. If you have had a chance to see it, I hope you liked it, but you'll have to wait to see what you think, what I thought of it come next week. So the coming attractions for the week of May 8th and May 9th, May 8th would be the PM showings, which I've been going to pretty regularly here. The first movie that we have is Neighbors, starring Seth Rogen, Zac Efron, and Rose Byrne. And they lead the cast of Neighbors, a comedy about a young couple suffering from arrested development who are forced to live next to a fraternity house after the birth of their newborn baby. Neighbors is directed by one of my favorite directors of comedy films, Nick Stoller. He directed Forgetting Sarah Marshall, Get Him to the Greek. I believe he also directed, I'm 99% sure he directed The 5-Year Engagement, which I absolutely loved. But I have a huge crush on Alison Brie and Emily Blunt, so that just made that whole movie all the better for me. But Chris Pratt and Jason Segel were just amazing in The 5-Year Engagement. I thought it was such a great film. Get Him to the Greek made me laugh so much. Forgetting Sarah Marshall, too. The character of Aldous Snow is just hilarious. And I thought both those films were just absolutely excellent. So I'm really looking forward to Neighbors. I'm going to hereby decree that Neighbors will be the movie that we'll be reviewing on May 8th and for our May 8th, May 9th release. So, yeah, I'm really, really excited for it. Also opening that week, we have Legends of Oz, Dorothy's Return, which is a 3D animated musical on the adventures books by Roger Stanton Baum, the great-grandson of L. Frank Baum, a continuation of one of the world's most popular and beloved fairy tales. Legends of Oz finds Dorothy, played by Lea Michele, waking to post-tornado Kansas, only to be whisked back to Oz to try to save her old friends, the Scarecrow, played by Dan Aykroyd, the Lion, played by Jim Belushi, and Tin Man, by Kelsey Grammer, and Glinda, played by Bernadette Peters. From a devious new villain, the Jester, played by Martin Short, Wiser Owl, Oliver Platt, holy cow, there's a lot of characters, Marshall Mallow, Hugh Dancy, China Princess, Megan Hilty, and Tug the Tugboat, played by Patrick Stewart. Join Dorothy on her latest magical journey through the colorful landscape of Oz to restore order and happiness to the Emerald City. set to the tunes of Academy Award nominated singer-songwriter Bryan Adams. They're pulling everyone out of the woodwork. Legends of Oz marks a charming, family-friendly return to the Oz franchise. That was a long description. I've seen previews for Legends of Oz. It does not look good to me. I like animated films a lot. I love Wreck-It Ralph. There's been a few other animated films. I can't remember them off the top of my head that I've really, really enjoyed that have come out lately. This one just doesn't have that good feeling to it like I had with those films after I saw the previews. But I got to say, the cast in this movie is, I mean, they're all actors. They're not voice actors, but to have Aaliyah Michelle, Dan Aykroyd, Jim Belushi, Kelsey Grammer, Martin Short, and Patrick Stewart, like, that's crazy. And then I'll just reveal this about myself. I love Bryan Adams. I love me some Bryan Adams music. And so that's kind of really cool to me. And if they kind of capture that Disney musical vibe with it, with Bryan Adams music, it could be good. But from what I've seen so far, I don't have a big reason to believe in it. I could be wrong. Lastly, we have Mom's Night Out. All Allison and her friends want is a peaceful, grown-up evening of dinner and conversation, a long-needed mom's night out. But in order to enjoy high heels, adult conversation, and food not served in a bag, they need their husbands to watch the kids for a few hours. What could go wrong? Mom's Night Out is an endearing, true-to-life family comedy. I don't know hardly anything about this movie. I think Trace Adkins, I think he's a country singer. He's in this movie. I think it's one of those, they're trying to create a family-friendly type of comedy film, since a lot of the comedy films that come out nowadays are very vulgar and directed towards an older audience with a much more modern sense of humor. And I think it's kind of cool that they're coming out with a film that is kind of getting back to that route of, yeah, you can watch this with your 8, 9, and 10-year-old kids, but it's not necessarily a kid's film. I kind of like that angle. And so, like I said, I don't know much about this film, but it's coming out along with Neighbors and The Legends of Oz. So that's all we have for our coming attractions for next week. Now streaming this week, we have Tucker and Dale versus Evil. Tucker and Dale are on vacation at their dilapidated mountain cabin when they are attacked by a group of preppy college kids. Starring Alan Tudyk, Tyler Labine, and Katrina Bowden. Written and directed by Eli Craig. This is Tucker and Dale versus Evil.
Oh, jeez. Whoa, Jesus.
Did you see the way those guys looked at us?
Who wants to go skinny dipping?
No.
We got your friend!
They captured Allison.
Oh, it's the pancakes. You hate pancakes. I'm gonna make you something else.
What am I doing here?
Fell into the water. Dove in and rescued you.
We'll go find your friends. You should relax. Tucker and Dale are on the case.
What is this place? It's just a cabin. It doesn't mean they're psycho killers.
Then why don't you go in there and talk to them?
All right, maybe I will.
So since I'm by myself this week, I'm actually going to do this review without spoilers. I'm going to just go ahead right up front and say it. I think that if you like comedy films and you like horror movies, you should watch Tucker and Dale versus Evil because it's really good. And last week I said that this was one of those movies that Netflix had recommended as a solid 5-star film for me. And while it's not that, it's still very, very good and really hilarious. It's a really strong spoof comedy that does a lot of cool stuff that you just don't expect. It's a really nice play on things. Now, I will say that none of the acting in this movie really... It's a comedy film. It's not supposed to be some tour de force of acting, right? But Alan Tudyk blended into his role as this mountain hillbilly, and so did Tyler Labine. And I thought Katrina Bowden is this pretty college girl who's really sweet, and is trying to get her major in psych and is really helpful towards people. I just thought that everyone in this film had some pretty decent chemistry with one another, and it's silly. It's not supposed to be a knockdown, drag out, emotional performance, right? Everyone's supposed to look really freaked out and confused and like, I don't know what's going on. And they do that really well in this movie. And I honestly have to say, I watched this at like midnight and I laughed out loud multiple times during this movie because of just how ridiculous things got. So the premise is that Tucker and Dale are basically just trying to do a little guy's vacation, and I think Dale, or is it Tucker? I don't know whichever one that Tyler Labine plays. He's really socially awkward, and he really likes girls, and he's a really sweet guy, but he's this awkward hillbilly, and no one understands him, and enter these preppy college kids who see them and judge them, right off the cover as being creepy hillbillies that are gonna kill him. They're gonna kill him, and this sets into motion this whole series of misunderstandings that these college kids think that they kidnapped one of their friends and they're going to kill her, but really they're trying to nurse her back to health. And because these college kids is prejudice towards these guys that look like hillbillies, they start to attack them because they assume the worst about them. And that play is just so funny to me. And the amount of situations that keep getting more and more ridiculous throughout the course of this movie are really funny. And it's a really, really unique horror comedy. It's a comedy, first off, but it takes a ton of tropes and just kind of cliches from horror movies and just kind of turns them on its head, because in traditional horror movies, the hillbillies in so many movies are the bad guys, and in this, these ignorant, stupid, judgmental college kids are the bad guys because of their own prejudice and stupidity. That's what makes them into bad guys. There is, one really weird sick kid that I think his transformation and everything is really kind of funny, but it's meant to be cheesy. It's meant to be spoofy. It's kind of, it does what it's trying to do, and it does it very well. I don't know. I gotta say that when I first started watching the film, I kind of didn't know where it was going. And I was kind of like, okay, it's these kids and they're the evil people, which I originally thought were Tucker and Dale, are just stupid. They're not really evil, but it really just flipped that on its head. And in about the 15-minute mark, I was just sucked into this movie and just laughing, because I really love movies like Scream. And I can't really think of any other horror movies. Oh, Shaun of the Dead and The World's End. It has that vibe to it. And I really love that, because it takes a lot of horror elements and it flips it on its head to make it funny. And I think the writing was really smart in this film, and I really liked it. And so I'm not going to go through full spoilers on this, but I really thought Tucker and Dale vs. Evil was a really smart, fun indie horror comedy. And I heard that they are in the process of working on a sequel, which I don't know how you do a sequel to this film, but cool. I like it. Let's do it. So if you haven't watched Tucker and Dale vs. Evil, please go do so if you like that horror comedy kind of genre stuff. If you love Shaun of the Dead, you love The World's End, you loved Scream even, you'll really like this movie. And if you like Alan Tudyk, come on. You've probably already seen it. I don't know what took me so long to see this movie. It's wash. But I will say that Tucker and Dale vs. Evil gets a 4.5 out of 5 for me.
Force will be with you, always.
So like I said at the top of the show, this show is going to be very short since it's just me and my opinions. So hopefully next week we can get back to normal. Jason will be back in town. We'll be reviewing The Amazing Spiderman 2 and our now streaming movie pick for next week, which I get to pick since Jason's not here right now, and I asked him via text, and he said that he wasn't sure yet. So I'm going to pick a movie that I think Jason will like. And so next week, our now streaming movie, if you want to watch it and so you can laugh along with our spoiler review of it, is the Ryan Gosling film Only God Forgives. I have still not seen Drive, and I was going to pick Drive, but they took Drive off of Netflix streaming, so we have to wait till that one comes back. And I've heard that one's better than Only God Forgives, but I don't know. I'm looking forward to it. I really like Ryan Gosling as an actor. I think he's really... I mean, I don't want to say he's underrated because he's not, but I think everyone looks at him and goes, oh, there's Ryan Gosling, this super attractive guy. He's not a great actor. He's just a pretty face. But I think that Ryan Gosling is a strong, strong actor, just like Brad Pitt early in his days. One of my favorite films was Seven. And so everyone kind of thought up until that point that Brad Pitt was just some pretty face, right? He was a model, I think. He was a guy that was not an actor, right? He was too pretty to be a really good actor. And I think Brad Pitt has shown the world that they were wrong. And Ryan Gosling, I like to think of him in the exact same way. He is an absolutely fabulous actor. And I've heard this is one of those strange indie type movies that the audiences like me, not critics like Jason, but audiences like me really hate. So hopefully I don't hate it, but I'm picking that one for Jason because I think that that's the type of movie that Jason would pick. So until next week, this has been Jacob Lee for the Mach 5 Network and the Picture Show podcast. And I hope everyone has a great week, and take care and peace out.
This has been a Mach 5 Network production. Be sure to subscribe to our shows on iTunes and Stitcher Radio. You can also like us on Facebook at facebook.com/Mach 5 Network. Follow us on Twitter at Mach 5 Network and email us at mach5network@gmail.com. Until next week, I'm your announcer, Crown Jules, logging off.